To celebrate the start of the XFL season, join me live on YouTube for every game this weekend, where we'll live stream the action. We'll talk about the game, and you can ask questions. Each stream starts 15 minutes before kickoff. And now, on with our featured presentation. Football players get motivation in some of the strangest ways. Now, sometimes they get it in completely legitimate ways. A team cut them, and they want to get revenge on that team. An opposing player or media member said that they couldn't win this game, and they want to prove them wrong. They're doing this for a family member, or a friend, or someone along those lines. Whatever gets you going and ready to play on Sunday gets you going. But sometimes, they get motivation with things that are either taken wildly out of context, or with things that didn't happen. One of my favorite storylines from this past postseason, for instance, was when Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback Trevor Lawrence said, "I can't imagine it'll be much louder than our fans were here on Saturday," even though he also said that the Chiefs fans provided one of the best environments in the NFL, that the team was emphasizing the importance of communicating and getting in and out of the huddle because it was going to be loud, and acknowledging that when they came to Arrowhead earlier in the season, it was for a regular season game, not a postseason game. Somehow, that innocent comment where he said, "Arrowhead Stadium was loud, but our fans were pretty loud too last Saturday," got completely blown out of proportion, and was used as motivation for some reason, as if that was going to make a difference. There was also Georgia's college football team saying that their national championship win was for all the doubters who said that they would go 7-5, even though no one, not a single soul, thought they'd be 7-5. Literally, a nuke could have hit the state of Georgia, and they were not going 7-5. It's like the Los Angeles Dodgers saying that this was to prove everyone who said we lose 100 games wrong. And then, there was the Chiefs saying this year that this Super Bowl win was for everyone who said we wouldn't make the playoffs. Because yeah, a ton of people had the team that made 4 straight conference championships entering the season, was one of the Super Bowl favorites, and has the best quarterback in football, missing the playoffs. This isn't a new phenomenon. Heck, I've even talked on this channel before about how the Cleveland Browns took a Tom Landry comment completely out of context prior to a playoff game in the 1960s, and they used that as motivation, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And in the incredibly heated history of the Chiefs-Chargers rivalry, well, this has to be the stupidest one of those. Because in a 1989 game between the two AFC West rivals, we can only refer to this game as the Christmas shopping game, where the Chargers took a complete joke that meant absolutely nothing from the man that you've been watching this whole time, Chiefs quarterback Steve DeBerg, and used that as motivation to play in this game. Whatever floats your boat and gets you going, I guess. But this whole incident just left a ton of people confused, wondering what the heck was so offensive and stupid about the comments in the first place. Because this is the story behind what might just be, in the over 60-year history of the Chiefs-Chargers rivalry, the dumbest moment of them all. Before I talk about the comments made, and how the Chargers felt about them, and how the game went, we need some context to understand the importance of this game, especially when it came to the Chiefs. It's December 17th, 1989. It's the penultimate game of the NFL season, and we're at Arrowhead Stadium for this AFC West battle between the Kansas City Chiefs, playing in their home finale, and the San Diego Chargers. The importance of this game for the Chiefs cannot be overstated, because entering this game, they were sitting pretty with a 7-6-1 record in Marty Schottenheimer's first season as a head coach. After back-to-back seasons with 4 wins in the previous 2 years under Frank Gans, they went from one of the worst teams in the league to a team that had a legitimate shot at making the playoffs in the uber-weak AFC for just the second time since 1972. I can't stress enough how tight things were in the AFC for the wildcard hunt, as with 2 weeks left, you had 7 teams within 1 game of each other for 2 spots. Leading the way were the Miami Dolphins and Los Angeles Raiders at 8-6, but the Chiefs were just half a game back at 7-6-1. The good news was that if they took care of business, seeing as they play the Dolphins to end the season, they would be in. They basically control their own destiny for all intents and purposes. The bad news was that they had no room for error whatsoever. Lose, especially this week against the Chargers, and you can kiss your playoff hopes goodbye for good. However, not only are you playing the Chargers at home, but it's the freaking San Diego Chargers. Sure, you lost to them in week 3 when you played them over at Jack Murphy Stadium, losing that one 21-6, but things were completely different now. You were coming off of 3 straight wins against the Houston Oilers, Miami Dolphins, and Green Bay Packers. All good teams. And the Chargers were, well, they were charging it up as the worst team in the AFC. By this point, San Diego was 4-10, tied with the New York Jets for the worst record in the AFC. They had nothing to play for. As a side note, if you want to learn more about the 1989 Chargers and a bizarre game that they had earlier in the season against the Eagles, you can do so by clicking the card in the upper right corner. Anyways, after a 2-2 start, they dropped 8 of their next 10 and had lost 4 straight games, including a home game to the New York Jets of all teams. They had an anemic offense that mustered up just 227 points, which was the 3rd worst total in the AFC, and came out to just over 16 points per game, and was a team that was absolutely reeling. Their head coach, Dan Henning, even seemed defeated after their most recent game, when they lost 26-21 to Washington, as afterwards, Henning said, "This group would have liked to have just one little old win under these conditions, but we just can't seem to squeak it out." Translation, we're trying everything, and we just can't do it. Considering all of that, and the fact that the Chiefs entered this game as 8-point favorites, this seemed like a cakewalk for Kansas City on so many levels. And that's when Henning had an idea, seeing as he and the team had nothing to lose. What if we do as little practicing as possible? Give the guys a breather, give them some extra time to recover, and then focus on the Chiefs game. Get their mind in a good place. With that, Henning, in a bizarre move, not only gave his players Monday off, and not only gave his players Tuesday off, but gave his players Wednesday off as well. For 3 days, don't report to the facility. Just do what you need to do in order to heal and get ready for this game. Get your mind in the right place. As Henning said on this bizarre strategy, they're kinda banged up. They need a respite, both physically and psychologically. We have some defensive players hurting. Get them off their feet, get them away from pictures and football, and let them come back fresh. It seemed like a pretty good idea. Now, just the idea of players getting 3 days in a row off during a regular week seemed insane to some. One Chargers spokesman who had been with the team for a while said that he could never remember anything like this happening before. 1 day off? That's mandated. 2 days off? It happens. But 3? That's a lot of time. That's when Chiefs quarterback Steve DeBerg was told about this on a conference call with local reporters. One of the reporters asked DeBerg about the Chargers' strategy when it came to their practices, to which DeBerg quipped, "Well, I guess that's so they can Christmas shop. That would be nice." Now, whether this joke landed, you be the judge of that. But in terms of things you can say, that is relatively inoffensive. You could play it safe and say, "I'm not one to comment on other teams and their situations." Or something like, "We're just focused on ourselves. I don't know about the Chargers situation." Or something like, "This just means they have one more day of rest, so they'll be all fired up coming out of the gates on Sunday." Instead, DeBerg went with the comedic route and said that this gives them a chance to go Christmas shopping. Like, that's not bad at all, especially since football players don't get a lot of free time to do this because of all the time they spend at the facility, and because DeBerg himself said that he would like a day off to get his Christmas shopping done. He literally said, "That would be nice." In no way whatsoever was this a dig at the Chargers. In no way whatsoever was this a criticism of Henning and what he was trying to do. And in no way was this a case of looking past San Diego. especially since this was the only comment made downplaying the Chargers, if you can even call it downplaying. This was just a quip, and was DeBerg's attempt at trying to be funny. Nothing more, nothing less. And yet somehow, you think after those comments that it was as though DeBerg guaranteed a victory and declared World War III on the Chargers. We'll get to what the Chargers thought about DeBerg's comments in a minute. But before we do that, I think we need to talk about how this game went that you've been watching this whole time. Because even though the Chargers were reeling and the Chiefs were heavy favorites at home fighting for their playoff lives, this game could not have gone worse for Kansas City. It was ugly with a capital U. In a must-win game, they completely faltered, all but ending their hopes at making it into the playoffs. Because when the final whistle sounded, the Chargers were victorious, as not only did they win the game 20-13, but they trailed 13-0 with under 2 minutes left in the second quarter, meaning that they scored 20 unanswered to win it, and pitched a shutout in the second half. The Chargers dominated the time of possession, holding onto the ball for 35 minutes. Their defense forced 3 turnovers, and their run game, thanks to some great running by Marion Butts, put on a clinic, as they picked up 217 yards on just under 5 yards per carry, with Butts having 39 carries for 176 yards. And defensively, not only did the Chargers allow just 11 first downs, making the Chiefs unable to move as they only got 214 total yards on the day, but they held Steve DeBerg in check, as DeBerg went 14 for 33, completing just 42.4% of his passes for 124 net passing yards, 2 interceptions, and a passer rating of 40.2, which, I can't say the line because it's not below the number, but it is awfully close, as in less than a point above it. So yeah, it was bad, and it gets even worse when you realize that with 2 minutes left in the game, DeBerg was 10 for 25 with 89 yards passing. Just to give you an idea of how bad it was, this was DeBerg's 9th start of the year. Here's his completion percentage in each of the previous 8 starts. And then, in the 9th start in that red bar, you can see, well below everything else, DeBerg's atrocious game against the Chargers that he would love to forget, and that cost his team a shot at the playoffs. And after the game, all the talk in the Chargers post-game locker room was about DeBerg's Christmas shopping comment, which again was bizarre, seeing as it wasn't even a knock on the Chargers or a sign of disrespect at all. DeBerg even flat out said after the game, it was a joke. It wasn't meant for anything. If I had an extra day off, I'd Christmas shop. Which is what DeBerg even said when he made the comment initially, when he said that it would be nice to Christmas shop. So it's not even like he's backtracking. But for the Chargers, that did not matter at all. Because just about every Charger took their turn spitting eggnog in DeBerg's face. Safety Vency Glenn said, I don't think what he said was appropriate. He threw 5 interceptions against us the first time. Then, to say something like that because they have a chance to go to the playoffs and we don't? You never downgrade your opponent. You always praise them, because on any given Sunday, you can get beat. You have to realize that. I don't think he does. He kind of fired us up. You never want to give your opponent extra incentive to raise their intensity to another level. Those kinds of statements backfire on you. Glenn then said that he got DeBerg a Christmas gift, saying, I went out and bought some stitches for him. Cornerback Elvis Patterson said, being the professional that he is, I was surprised he would say something like that. It was a big mistake on his part. We don't Christmas shop early. We are professional football players, and he should have respected us as such. You can talk, but in the end, you have to let your actions speak for you. Basically, that's what we did. Somewhat bizarre on Patterson's part saying that they don't Christmas shop early, seeing as this game took place a week before Christmas. So I wouldn't exactly say that getting Christmas shopping done at this point is early. If anything, it's a bit late. But to add fuel to the fire, linebacker Gary Plummer said, "Tell Steve he can get all his Christmas shopping done now." Which again, doesn't make any sense, seeing as the season ends on December 24th. So whether they made the playoffs or not, this isn't impacted in the slightest bit. Either way, playoffs or no playoffs, 16-0 or 0-16, if you celebrate Christmas, you have to find a way to get your shopping done in the middle of the season. That's what makes everything about this make no sense. DeBerg was making a joke, and his joke had nothing to do with the Chargers being out of the playoffs and not being a good team. It was a joke about how football season and Christmas season coincide. So to have an opportunity to get some shopping done that you normally wouldn't have time to do must feel great. And somehow, the Chargers took this as though DeBerg killed their families. I mean, it worked as motivation, and it helped the Chargers win, I guess. But it's just so bizarre how this innocent little one-liner that should not have been even the slightest bit controversial caused such an uproar. Because during the 1989 holiday season, I think it's safe to say that considering the loss, and considering the beating that he took, and considering the backlash he got out of nowhere for what he said, that Kansas City Chiefs quarterback Steve DeBerg had a blue Christmas. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at Jaguar Gator 9. To see college football videos, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.